According to ancient legend, fire is a gift from the gods. It is a piece of heaven on earth that gives us light and warmth. But since man has gained control of this gift, he has fought to maintain it. When its power is unleashed against a grand old passenger ship and a popular Boston nightclub, the fires of heaven become the fires of hell on earth. Cruel, vindictive, and out of control. More than 10,000 years ago, giant glaciers in North America carved one of the largest concentrations of fresh water on the planet. We call them the Great Lakes. With the settling of North America, these huge inland seas become a center for commerce and community. By the turn of the 20th century, cruise ships rivaling the great luxury ocean liners make regular excursions on the Great Lakes.
In a hot summer, you could take a short break virtually in your own backyard on the Great Lakes and run all the way up to Duluth or the Canadian Lakehead on an absolutely wonderful trip and get a chance to see the Canadian and northern wilderness up close.
The Lady of the Great Lakes is the Ss Neuronic. Built in 1913, she is the flagship of the Canada Steamship Lines. She is 5 decks high and longer than a football field, with a capacity to carry 600 passengers and 200 crew.
She was a very tall ship. She didn't have a normal design where the sides of the vessel would come straight down into the water. She had sides that came down and then spread out, came down. As a result of this design, she became known, or was well known among seamen on the lakes, as the pregnant lady of the lakes.
Her carpeted staterooms and salons are lined with the finest mahogany, oak, and cherry wood. All are finished by hand and oiled to a glistening sheen. On board there is a library, barber shop, beauty salon, even a chapel for Sunday services. The Neuronic is a floating hotel, the largest and finest on the Great Lakes.
And there was the dining room, which was a magnificent dining room, just like the old hotels. White tablecloths, silver cutlery, big mirrors. Every table always had fresh flowers.
Friday, September 16th, 1949. On a warm, cloudless evening, the Ss Neuronic announces her entrance into Toronto Harbor. It is the end of her 36th season. The overnight stop in Toronto is the ship's last before docking for winter. Almost all the passengers are American, from Michigan and Ohio.
She had 524 passengers aboard that she picked up in Detroit and in Cleveland before transiting the Welland Canal down to Toronto. They were mostly older people, people above the age of 50, but some younger people traveling as well, much fewer. Neuronic had a tremendous following among travelers. If you went on the Neuronic once, chances are you'd go back again.
As she approaches Pier 9, some passengers gather on the promenade section of the 3 passenger decks, A, C, and D. Captain William Taylor is on the bridge. A seaman for 40 years, he is proud of the fact that he has never lost a passenger. Once the gangplank is in place, passengers disembark for a taste of Toronto nightlife. So do most of the 171 crew. They're looking forward to a little shore leave.
We were happy because it was our second last cruise. We had 1 more week to go before we came back to Toronto. We finished serving and we came to the harbor. It was a beautiful evening. It was a serene night. It was September, but it was like a summer night.
Along with the first officer, there is a 3-man operating crew in the ship's wheelhouse. 7 more crew members man the engine room. 4 bellmen provide room service for a total onboard crew of 15. 15 out of 171. For the passengers still on board, there is a dance in the ballroom, card games in the lounges, private parties throughout the ship. For older passengers and families with children, it's time for bed.
By 7 o'clock, the maids were already turning down the beds and the ship was preparing for night. By the end of the evening, towards midnight, the lounge was shutting down aboard the ship and people were settling down for the night.
During the evening, an inspection tour is carried out by the 2 wheelsmen on duty. It does not include a close inspection of all the passenger decks. Fire drills are routine on the Neuronic, but usually do not involve passengers. Outboard hoses and hydrants are tested during these drills, but those inside the ship are seldom checked. There have been minor fires in the past. In 1939, one breaks out on sea deck while the Neuronic is docked in Toronto Harbor. It occurs during the day and is dealt with quickly. 10 years later, sea deck hasn't changed. Staterooms on both sides of the deck run the entire length of the ship. Near the lounge at the stern are 2 closets used to store bed linens and cleaning supplies. Inside one, patiently biding its time, is a disaster waiting to happen. Saturday, September 17th, 1949, 1 a.m. Most passengers and crew have returned from downtown. Many are asleep in their beds. Some still roam the dock and ship decks. In the sea deck lounge, not far from the 2 linen closets, 3 couples from Cleveland decide to reshuffle the cards and order a snack instead of calling it a night. It is a decision that will save their lives. Donald Church is in the lounge with them. He's an insurance agent from Ohio. His specialty is fire insurance. Just before 1:15 a.m., Captain Taylor returns to the ship after spending the evening with friends. He climbs the stairs to his quarters on A deck. Minutes later, insurance agent Donald Church leaves the lounge to go to his cabin. In the corridor, something makes him stop. The air is hazy with a distinct smell he knows only too well, the smell of smoke. Moving down the corridor of sea deck, Neuronic passenger Donald Church discovers smoke billowing from under the door to one of the linen closets. He turns and runs for help. He finds 19-year-old bellman Ernest O'Neill. Instead of sounding the alarm, O'Neill follows Church back to the linen closet with a fire extinguisher and a key. At first, the few flickering flames don't seem that serious. But with the open door, O'Neill gives the fire what it needs most.
There was a slight breeze blowing from the southwest, and it fanned the flames forward. Once the closet door was opened and the flames leapt into the companionway, it was basically an open breezeway all the way through the ship.
It was just like though gasoline were being poured on that fire.
Ernest O'Neill empties his extinguisher, but the fire only gets more intense. Donald Church opens the valve to a nearby hose, but the water never comes. There is nothing more he can do but try to save his family. Crewman O'Neill sounds the alarm. It has been 7 minutes since the fire was discovered. 7 minutes too late. With raging speed, the fire spreads out, licking hungrily at the wood-lined walls and varnished floors.
It had been lemon oiled for all the years the Neuronic had sailed. Well, you can imagine how much oil was in that wood over all those years. and it just caught, and it would just literally explode in the interior.
The decks of the ship opened onto balconies where there were no separations from one deck to the next, and therefore the fire could spread right through, both up and down. In fact, some of the passengers described the flames rolling through the ship like a waterfall. At 1:33, we know that the watchkeeper on the dock was sitting in his shack with his back to the ship when he noticed a red glow on the side of his shack. He turned around to see the ship on fire and called the fire department. That was the first time the alarm had been raised with any authorities on shore.
On board, the first officer sounds the ship's klaxon horns to waken and warn sleeping passengers. But the whistle alarm to alert the crew jams. It begins to blow in one long, continuous wail. In corridors and staterooms throughout the ship, panic grabs hold.
People were surprised and confused from behind closed doors in your stateroom to hear commotion in the hall. One's first reaction might not be to open the door and see what was going on. But when shouts of fire started to spread through the ship and knocking and pounding on doors began, it became very clear that they had to get out and get out quickly to save their own lives.
As the fire blazing on board the Neuronic continues to spread, sleeping passengers remain unaware of the danger. Aboard the Neuronic Inferno, asleep in her crew quarters, waitress Regina Gauthier feels someone touch her shoulder. She is alone, but she hears a commotion in the hall.
What met me was not a fire that you would lit like wood. It was like a ball, something that was lifting from the floor. It was rolling. The heat was so bad that it almost choked. It was running, and then it would roll. But the heat was so bad that I closed the door.
In his bunk, bellman Don Carlson is also wakened by the commotion outside. But at first, he is not concerned.
But I thought it was just a bunch of young people coming back from town and having a good time and went back to sleep. And then I heard the whistle going, and then I started to think twice because they didn't sound the whistle in a long, steady blast at night.
In downtown Toronto, it's been an unusually quiet night for police officers Andy Anderson and Warren Shattuck. They happen to be driving toward the harbor area when the call comes in to investigate a box alarm at Pier 9.
We were turning from Cherry Street on to Lakeshore, and we were looking dead west, and the whole sky was lighted. And I said to Warren, "What the hell's going on? That's not a box alarm. The docks are on fire."
Officers Anderson and Shattuck are the first to arrive at Pier 9. The Neuronic is already engulfed in flames.
Now, the first thing we're confronted with is the dreadful noise of the ship's whistle, which made communication difficult, and it just went in constantly at a very high pitch. Then we were engulfed with passengers coming out of the building who have come off the ship, and some of them are on fire, some of their clothing is on fire. A lot of them are in a state of absolute panic and screaming and quite out of control, and I'm talking now about 50, 60, 70 people.
1:41 a.m. As the officers tend to the injured, firefighters from the Toronto Fire Department arrive at the pier. One look tells them the situation is already beyond their control. They call for backup.
And people were running and screaming and yelling, and it was very obvious that they had been trying to put out the fire for some time themselves. It was just unbelievable. I have never, ever seen such a fire as that in my life before or after.
37 fire hoses are trained on the Neuronic, pumping thousands of liters of water every second. But it's not nearly enough.
Every deck was ablaze. One fireman told me that the heat was so intense, the water from those hoses, those pressure hoses, was turning to steam before it even hit the side of the ship.
When the firefighters arrived, people were already gathering on decks trying to discover ways that they could get off the ship. Not everyone was familiar with the ways which you could exit a ship, and in fact, there was only one gangway known to the public on E deck that they could actually get off the ship.
Donald Church and his family, and the card players from the lounge on C deck, find the gangway easily. They walk off the ship unharmed. Others have to be more inventive.
And I looked up and I could see the fire blossoming out forward from the top deck. So there was no way you could go forward, but someone had conveniently left a line hanging down from the loading platform on the 2 decks up. And it was simply a case of grabbing the line, sliding down the rope onto the dock, which was probably about a 20-25-foot drop.
Many aren't so fortunate. As the fire spreads, it chases frantic passengers and crew, relentlessly tracking them down.
People were jumping overboard into the harbor. People were jumping off the ship onto the dock. People were climbing down ropes. People were stringing bed sheets together. And in this condition, when the fire department arrived, the fire was already advancing from the stern forward, and people were trying to get off the ship in any way that they could.
It was just like everybody's talking, everybody's going on. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And then you see all these people screaming, and you see these people jumping, and where are they jumping to? There's no place to jump to but the cement. I was just in a daze, and I just kept looking around. And eventually somebody said to me, there's a rope at the end. I came down the rope, I hit the water, and that's how I was rescued.
On the dock below, passerby Don Williamson is one of several people doing their best to rescue those who have fallen or jumped into the harbor.
He was just coming home from work at the Goodyear tire plant when he heard the whistles, understood what the whistles meant, and came to the scene and discovered people already jumping in the water, after which time he pushed a painting raft out and began to haul people out of the water.
The main whistle was blowing steady. I told the people to get on, but I just motioned them to get on because you couldn't talk. So I grabbed them by their shirt tail like that and started pulling them onto the raft.
Bellman Don Carlson and 2 other crew members also risk their lives by going back on board. Through portholes, they can see passengers still in their cabins. But the portholes are covered by protective screening, stuck fast by decades of paint.
Many of those people, they didn't burn. They suffocated in their cabins. And we could see through the windows in some of the cabins. Some of the people were still in their bunks, had just suffocated right there, just as though they were sleeping. But you couldn't get to them, so you didn't know whether they were gone or not. You just couldn't get the screens off. They were painted on.
I can still picture that boat burning, that roaring flames and the intensity of the heat. You couldn't get anywhere close to it. The firemen had to stand quite a ways back too, and they couldn't go aboard. In other words, the people were perishing within a few feet of the firemen with no way to rescue them.
When the fire burns itself out, the firemen's frustration will be matched only by the gruesome sights they find on board. Saturday, September 17th, 1949. At 6 a.m., the seams of the Neuronic's blackened hull burst, and the ship fills with water. The once Grand Lady of the Lake settles to the bottom of Toronto Harbor, still smoldering. Ambulances, police cars, even taxicabs have been transporting the injured to hospitals since 3 that morning. Nearby hotels turn lobbies and banquet halls into aid stations and dormitories for the other injured passengers. Firefighters are finally able to go on board. Heat still rises from the charred ruins, but what they find there chills them to the bone. The ship has been gutted from bow to stern. On sea deck, they find 2 bodies pressed against the port rail. Their blackened hands still clutch the scarred metal. It is only the beginning. The heaviest toll is in the staterooms. Bodies lie on fire-stripped springs where passengers slept and died. The seared body of a young mother still holds her baby in a protective embrace. The city morgue soon overflows. The horticultural building on the exhibition grounds becomes a temporary replacement. By late Saturday, the smell of flowers gives way to the odor of charred flesh.
I saw something I'd never seen before, a great number of charred remains of people. Some that burned away. They had other parts of the bodies that they hadn't connected up with the torso and all that. Up to then, I'd seen people burned in fires, but I'd never seen so many charred remains. Maybe as much as 3, 4, 5 years later, when I would go to the C&E with my kids, I couldn't go in that building, even though at that time it was enveloped in flowers and horticulture and had a wonderful fragrance to it of growing flowers and trees and waterfalls and all the rest of it. But in my mind, I couldn't get rid of the vision of these charred bodies laying out in rows on picnic tables, over 100 of them.
119 to be exact. All are American, and all are passengers.
It was a rather damning piece of evidence, if you will, that no single member of the crew lost their life in the fire, and that can be attributed to the fact that the crew knew how to get off the ship.
For some of the anxious relatives, the news is good. For others, it is the beginning of a painful and painstaking process of identification.
They were burned very badly. Large parts of the body were missing. And I took a look at the first body, and all there was a pelvis and a bit of a spine. It was obvious that we weren't going to be doing the usual sort of autopsies.
An identification team is assembled. Doctors, dentists, X-ray technicians, and city morticians. Bodies and personal effects are carefully cataloged. The smallest patch of cloth is a potential clue.
Could we identify them according to their sex? Could we identify them according to injuries and so forth? So we were told to look very carefully. And while we were doing this, the dentists were working in pairs, and they were trying to make records of the dentition. The FBI sent up an investigator, and we took off all the fingers and put them in separate bottles and labeled them, and he took them back to Washington. And they were able to take little bits of skin and soften them up and make them pliable again, and then press them on a piece of glass, and you get the fingerprint.
All but 3 bodies are positively identified. A federal inquiry finds the steamship company responsible for a number of reasons, including the inadequate inspection of the ship's decks. Captain Taylor is suspended for 1 year for escaping the ship before ensuring the safety of his passengers. He chooses to retire a broken man. Canada Steamship Lines is ordered to pay $2.1 million in damages.
Fire separations to stop fire from spreading from one section of the ship to the next were mandatory after that. Sprinkler systems, automated alarm systems, regulated fire patrols, trained firefighting personnel aboard ship. All of these things came to pass as a result of the Neuronic inquiry. Some had already been in existence on other ships, but after 1949, this was mandatory.
$119 dead, hundreds more whose lives are changed forever. But even these numbers seem small compared to one horrible night in Boston, when a popular night spot becomes hotter than anyone could ever imagine. November 28, 1942. 41,000 college football fans jam into Boston's Fenway Park to watch the out-of-town Holy Cross Crusaders take on their arch rivals, the Boston College Eagles. Don Gribbons and his friend Tommy Sheehan have come in from Worcester to cheer for their hometown team, the Crusaders. Don has just recently become a firefighter.
I decided that I wanted something a little different, and I took the examination for the Worcester Fire Department. So I got appointed in November 4th of 1942.
Boston College is the 4-1 favorite and is so sure to win that a victory party has already been arranged at one of the city's hottest night spots, the Coconut Grove. 17-year-old Pauline Brooks is dating the captain of the Eagles football team. She looks forward to seeing the Coconut Grove for the first time.
And I had gotten permission from my father to go, and I'd always wanted to see what it was like inside. My father was very strict in bringing us up, and I was not 18, so he had to agree.
The victory party is premature. Holy Cross surprises everyone by outplaying the Eagles right from the opening kickoff.
The Holy Cross created the biggest upset in the history of athletics by defeating BC a score of 55-12 and spoiling Boston College's chance of going to the Orange Bowl.
In no mood to celebrate, someone from Boston College telephones the Coconut Grove to cancel their reservations. Holy Cross fans are more than eager to take their place.
After the game, we heard a lot of the crowd was going to the Coconut Grove. So Don and I, after a while, we got something to eat, and we hired a cab and we went to the Coconut Grove.
A fixture of Boston since 1927, the Coconut Grove is the #1 place to be. On the main floor, it features a dining room complete with dance floor and 2 lounges, the Caricature Bar and the new Broadway Lounge, opened just 2 weeks earlier in the building next door. There is another piano bar in the basement. The Melody Lounge is intimate and dimly lit, decorated to look like an island paradise with artificial palms and sky blue fabric draped just below the ceiling. Customers enter the main floor of the Coconut Grove through a single revolving door at the club's front entrance, which leads them into the foyer, the Caricature Bar, and the large dining room. Stairs to the left of the revolving door take patrons to the Melody Lounge in the club basement. The new Broadway Lounge has its own entrance off a small vestibule at the east end of the building. A narrow hallway leads from the lounge to the main dining room. Several patrons in the main dining room have already recognized Hollywood cowboy star Buck Jones sitting on the VIP terrace. By 10 p.m., staff can hardly maneuver through the crowded dining room. Customers are redirected to the new Broadway Lounge around the corner. Among them are Don Gribbons and Tommy Sheehan.
So we met the group from Worcester, and we tried to get into where they were seated with the Melody Lounge. And we could. There was no room there.
The Melody Lounge downstairs is just as crowded. Designed for 100 customers, there are at least twice that many. The only access to the basement is the narrow set of stairs to the left of the club foyer. In the corner of the Melody Lounge, Iria Finn celebrates her 21st birthday with friends.
We went there about 9:30, and we went into the Melody Lounge, and we sat directly under the palm tree where it all started.
She watches as a young man at the next table loosens the light bulb above him, casting the area in darkness. 16-year-old busboy Stanley Tomaszewski also notices and alerts one of the bartenders. It is 10 minutes after 10.
He was told by the bartender to go over and re-screw in a light bulb that had been unscrewed by a patron who wanted a little more privacy for his time with his girlfriend. The light bulb happened to be in one of the coconut husks that was on the palm tree. At first he couldn't find the bulb, so he lit a match and held it up about 10 inches now below the palm tree. Saw the coconut husk there with a little 7.5 watt light bulb in it. Blew the match out, tightened the bulb, stepped down, put the match on the floor, stepped on it and left.
As the busboy returns to the bar, customers around the palm tree catch a glimpse of orange flame in the paper leaves above. As flames shoot down the wood trunk, staff tries to pull the tree away from the ceiling fabric, but it is too late. Fire explodes across the ceiling with astounding speed, hungrily devouring the decorative cloth. Frantic customers stampede to the only exit they know, the narrow stairs to the main floor. Many try to escape through an emergency exit at the top of the stairs, but the door is bolted shut. Behind them, people push forward, but there is nowhere to go. Upstairs, in the main dining room, customers wait for the floor show to begin. Their attention is drawn to a commotion in the foyer. It sounds like someone shouting "fight," but when a cloud of black smoke pours through the archway, they realize that the word is fire. A blast of flame bolts across the cloth-covered ceiling. Many customers die where they sit, burned by searing flames or smothered by hot smoke. Customers and staff rush to a set of double emergency doors at the back of the club. Just as they discover that the doors are locked shut, the lights go out.
And all of a sudden the place is in pitch darkness. Even if they knew that there was a door somewhere, there was no indication of it.
Ravenous for more oxygen, the fire rushes down the corridor leading from the dining room to the new Broadway lounge. 17-year-old singer Dottie Miles is just about to begin her set.
And the singer was taking the request for songs, and we asked her to play the Holy Cross Victory song. And it wasn't very shortly after that that we heard this tipping over of tables and screaming and hollering.
And all of a sudden, we could smell smoke. And the next thing we knew, on the right-hand side of the bar, a big blast of flame come out through the walls. And everybody got excited and started to jump out of their tables and seats.
It was just mass confusion. There was no heroics there. It was everybody for themselves.
November 28, 1942. At approximately 10:15 p.m., the Boston City Fire Department receives a call about a fire in the entertainment district. Charles Kenny Sr. is part of a company of firefighters who extinguish a small blaze in a parked car near the Coconut Grove. They are about to return to base when they hear screams coming from a block away. Nearby, Detective Elmer Brooks and his partner are parked near a police call box.
And they were just sort of talking, and they were talking actually about the BC Holy Cross game. There was a flashing light on the call box near them. So he called it and they said, Brooks, it's Coconut Grove, it's on fire. When my father and his partner got there, my father said it was like Dante's Inferno, it was a scene out of hell. And my father thought that I was there.
Outside the club's front entrance, firefighters watch helplessly as the drama unfolds on the other side of the glass revolving door.
They told me of what actions they took, and the tail end of every interview ended with the same comment. They said, geez, Charlie, if only we could have gotten in there.
The revolving door, jammed under pressure, is held fast by the growing pile of charred bodies as the panicked crowd continues to push forward.
That was a mob scene, everybody heading for the revolving doors. So I hung on to the coattails of this fellow, saying, well, I'll follow him and he'll pull me through here. And he elbowed me as if to say, look, everybody for themselves here.
Still inside the Broadway lounge, Don Gribbins uses his firefighter training to try and save himself and his friend Tommy Sheehan.
Always lay as close to the floor as you can, because that's where, if there's any air in the room at all, you're going to find them that close to the floor. And I said, Tommy, let's go towards that room. Somewhere along the line, Tommy got lost in the shuffle.
It started to get black. Everybody stood screaming. You could hear the women screaming all over, the men yelling, let's get to the door, let's get to the door.
So I proceeded along the floor until I got to a point where I could see that the door was, because the bodies were piled up there probably 5 or 6 feet.
In their struggle to get out, customers have been able to force open the door to the vestibule, at least for the moment. It is all Don Gribbins needs.
I got to sit up quick, took a lunge, and I got over the bodies and I fell out into the street.
Gribbins grabs an axe from a nearby fire truck and, with the help of a passing pedestrian, begins to smash through a glass block window.
Once we got one loose, we allowed some air to get in there. And those who were at the door or near the door, they had any life left in them at all, went for that opening.
Inside, Tommy Sheehan feels his face blister as black smoke swirls around him. Something hits the back of his head, and he goes down. In the main dining room, customers and staff manage to break open the double doors at the back of the club. Some are able to rush into the street as fresh oxygen rushes in. The flames, drawn by the promise of fresh air, hit the exit with an explosive blast. Firefighter Charles Kenny tries to help.
My dad went down Shawmut Street, and when he hit that double door, people were trying to pour out of it. And as he stepped in, what he beheld was a pile of humanity about 5 feet high, 6 feet high, 50, 60, 70 bodies, and some alive, some already dead.
Police Detective Elmer Brooks helps firefighters at the front entrance.
And then he was trying to help pull bodies out from the revolving door because they were just stacked up like cordwood there. The door was jammed, and arms and legs would come off in his hands at times. He was constantly looking at faces because he kept praying that I wasn't there. You know, he kept thinking, my God, please don't let her be there.
It is only later that Detective Brooks finds out that his daughter is safe at home.
He couldn't talk. He just opened his arms, and I walked into them, and he never said a word. I could see his eyes. I mean, you could see pain reflected in them and so forth.
By 11 p.m., the fire is under control. Firefighters make their way through the shambled ruins. There are over 100 bodies stacked by the entranceway to the Broadway lounge, and many more in the corridor leading to the main dining room. Firefighter Charles Kenny Sr. finds singer Dottie Miles under a pile of corpses. Her face and hands are burned and black, but she is still alive. Tommy Sheehan is alive too, protected by the bodies that covered him when he fell.
And somebody grabbed me and said, "You better go to the hospital, you're all burnt." And the next thing I knew, paramedics must have picked me up and brought me to Boston City Hospital.
Firefighters find many more bodies in the main floor supper club. On the VIP terrace, cowboy star Buck Jones barely clings to life. In the Melody Lounge in the basement, corpses on the stairs are heaped 2 and 3 high. The emergency fire door that could have taken them to safety is double bolted shut.
Rather than having someone sneak out without paying a bill, some of the doors were bolted, others were locked. The only exit that most people knew was the way they came in.
One survivor is Iria Finn.
Somehow it's confusing after that, but I know fireman pulled me out, and I'm sitting there with no shoes on and no coat or anything. And then a fireman came there and got me and took me to my girlfriend's house, and I could hear the sirens all night.
In the days that follow, the number of dead grows with every headline. The final total is 492. The youngest victim is 15. Miraculously, singer Dottie Miles survives, despite burns to over 50% of her body. Investigations by state and county district attorneys run concurrently with a public inquest. For a time, busboy Stanley Tomaszewski shoulders the blame for starting the fire. But in fact, by coincidence, the fire is already lurking behind the wall of the Melody Lounge when the busboy strikes his match.
He was, from my point of view, the major victim of the Coconut Grove fire, because he lived under the mantle of having been called murderer and of having actually started the Coconut Grove fire.
In point of fact, and this was later determined to be the case, what actually started the fire was a big short circuit in an overfused line behind the false wall.
Charles Kenny Jr. attributes the fire's unusual speed to an air conditioner in the Melody Lounge, fueled not by Freon as first thought, but by a much more volatile substance, methyl chloride.
The whole catastrophe happened in somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes. In essence, the accelerant, the initial accelerant that blew that fire to glory right away was methyl chloride escaping from that condenser compressor.
Owner Barney Wilansky is found guilty and sentenced to 12 to 15 years for manslaughter and conspiracy to violate building laws. After serving 2.5 years, he is pardoned for ill health and dies a few months later. A Boston Fire Department report makes several recommendations, including the use of sprinkler systems in public places, clearly marked exit doors, and more than one avenue of escape. The report sparks changes to antiquated fire regulations across the United States and Canada. Those who have faced the blazing destruction of Boston's Coconut Grove or witnessed the fiery death of the Neuronic in Toronto Harbor have also seen their lives changed forever. It is a memory that will never fade.
Although he and my mother owned 3 and more homes in succession, all had fireplaces. My father would never let a fire be lit. Not even in the winter, not at holiday time, Christmas or whatever, he never allowed a fire. So it did impact him quite a great deal.
I always said my guardian angel was with me because whoever touched me, there was no one there. I was the only one. Somehow I knew someone was more or less protecting me.
I thank God that I was able to come out and live another day and raise 8 children and 27 grandchildren. So I was put on this earth for something. I kept on this earth.
I think I appreciated everything a little more fully, knowing that I might not have ever been. So I'm very grateful that it wasn't my time. I didn't go. God or the hand of Providence stopped me from going.